Hello, good evening, and welcome to some exclusive content here on BSCDA TV. In what has been, let's be honest, a pretty rubbish year, it's great to be able to discuss some real positives. To do so, I'm going to introduce two individuals, Steve Rees and Ian Higgins. Steve, Ian, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hi.
Hello. So, right, let's just, in terms of making a start, can you just give us a bit of an update on where we're up to in terms of getting Formula 1 stock cars back to Bradford?
Yeah, 99%. We've done everything we need to do. As recently as about 5 o'clock tonight, I've had an email from the Rugby League, Tony Sutton, and it appears that, well, everything has been agreed. It's now basically down to the legals for the final draft of the heads of agreement, which we would hope to have next week. So 99%, they're just subject to contract, as they would say.
90, that's a big number. That's a big number. And I think it quite simply, it's that news that every Formula 1 stock car fan, or every stock car fan wants to hear, that, you know, that Bradford is coming back. And it's that yearly debate, isn't it, that we have, will Bradford return? And, you know, it goes on year after year. So why is now the time, some 20 years, I guess, since the sport last sort of left the venue?
Well, it's not the fact that it's been 20 years doesn't mean it's 23 years actually, and about every 2 years since then we've been trying. I mean, the closest we got was in 2013, where we sort of got, well, we had got an agreement with the Bradford Bulls, or OK Bulls at the time, and stock cars and Speedway to come back. We went through everything that was required to do in terms of planning, etc. Unfortunately, went into administration, but this has been a 23-year vision to come back since October 1997 when we left.
Yeah. Okay. So, you, like I say, you previously promoted there, Steve, and Ian, you're obviously on board this time. So, what is the arrangement? Is it a joint promotion, or what's the setup going to be?
No, basically, it's pretty much Steve's passion. It's Steve's dream, as he said. It has been for 23 years. When it very first sort of flickered, almost a year ago now, I would say, Steve rang me and sort of mentioned it to me, and asked me if I'd be interested in getting involved in some way or another. So basically I said, yeah, I've been to all the meetings with Steve, with Bradford Bulls, with the with the Rugby League. You know, we've been up to the track a couple of times. And so, yeah, you know, I'm there supporting Steve, basically. You know, it's, as I say, it's been a 23 years passion for him, really. For me, it's a little bit more detached than that.
Okay.
I think, Jonathan, it's more about, I mean, me and Ian have been friends for over 30 years. This is a huge project.
Yeah.
Many faceted. It will be run like a football ground in terms of security, stewarding, etc., much as it was before. But it's all in our lap. Back in '97, I was 23 years younger. It's a case of I cannot run round everywhere. Bringing Ian on board, we want to put a good team together. It's a big project, and make sure we do it right. So it's to sort of share the responsibilities, operational responsibilities, etc. So we can devote the right amount of time that it deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. That makes sense, and clearly it's going to be a great partnership. I guess that, you know, clearly a huge amount of investment is required to get racing back at Bradford. You've kind of alluded to that already. So why do you see it as such a great opportunity? Why are you kind of going back, if you like?
Why does somebody spend £60,000 on buying a Formula 1?
Well,
how do you argue business sense against passion? It's, for me, it was my intention to retire the end of 2020. But I think we didn't want to leave where it's beyond our control, Bellevue and Stoke being redeveloped. We've been pursuing this opportunity for a number of years. It resurrected itself last November. We had, at the same time, since October last year, been looking at Leicester, but that was very, very slow progress with the main leaseholder. Bradford came up and tenaciously. It is just over 12 months to the day since we started. I think it's a dream as well. I mean, Bradford is for those of us in the north is as iconic, if not more, than for those of us live in the Midlands. And say the same thing about Coventry.
Yeah,
I mean, it has a part in the sport or has its part for motorsport, and commercially, we hope it's going to be a success. I mean, it is over sort of around about £250,000 investment to go into it. The figures are big in terms of operating costs on the day. It's a challenge, but I think if we didn't grasp it this year, with the stadium having been closed since May 2019 when the Bulls went into administration, I think if it was another year, that the stadium would be lost to those possibly for redevelopment.
Right. Okay. So it's almost the last chance to get back there then.
Yeah, to back up what Steve said there. Yeah, it is pretty much. If it didn't happen this time, it just wouldn't happen. I don't think, and I think it's the fact that Steve's worked so hard at it, and a lot of the stuff that Steve did back in 2013 has actually helped us this time in where we're going. But I think if this opportunity had been missed, I think that would have been it. Wouldn't you agree, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. You've grasped it. The big question, if I may, shale or tarmac?
I'm amazed people are asking that question because I've given enough. There's been enough clues. Speedway, unless you're in Japan, doesn't race on tarmac, although they do in Japan on industrial talcum powder. Shale.
100% shale. Brilliant.
I'm leaving the door open for Speedway. Obviously, we've had some interest in Speedway there because my plan was to bring Speedway and stock cars back, although I didn't want to run the Speedway, and I've done that myself in 1997. Obviously, Speedway clubs, the same as us, have had a very hard year.
Yeah.
But it was leaving the door open so we could, if we re-tarmacked it, there was no way I was putting shale down on it after that.
Yeah.
Ironically, as recently as this afternoon, I have been approached by a couple of people who are possibly looking to try and put a consortium together for Speedway. But my view, if Odsal could come back with Speedway, it would have been a small scale because of the planning we've done so far for stock cars.
Yeah.
Sort of middle of the year. But I think with Speedway now at this timing, we'd probably be looking more towards 2022.
Okay. But the door's obviously open with having the shell down. And, yeah, absolutely. So the lack of a safety fence and the hospitality building on turns 3 and 4 has always been cited in the past as being blockers for racing returning. So what's the plan to kind of deal with those two issues?
Well, it sounds a bit like Stuxnet, this. Since 2002, the annual questioning, you can't have stock cars there because they built the stand. Well, they've proven wrong. Yeah. Because the standards have always said, but nobody ever takes it on board, was built around the track.
Okay.
Beyond the fence line. Somebody did steal the fence a number of years ago. It would have been a lot easier had that happened. But we have got contractors. We've worked out how much plate. So we are basically reinstalling new for old.
Okay. So in terms of the fence itself, it's going to be like a boilerplate fence then? Is that what's going to go in there?
10mm plate fence all the way around.
Brilliant. Okay. And prior to this interview, we've spoken around how you want to make Bradford sort of fresh and different for both fans and drivers. Can you give us a bit of an insight to what that looks like for next year, hopefully?
It's about a show, really, isn't it, Steve? We want to put on a show, a slick show. Steve and I have talked about it. We want to try and get a 3-hour show on. And, that's what it wants to be. Leave people wanting and bring them back. I think that's where we're looking in it, Steve.
One of the things I've learned, I'm always learning, not just from Formula Ones, not just from social media, but I think the whole sport has gone slightly in the wrong direction with meetings being too long, too many formulas on. It can't all be just about Formula One because we run more than that product. the interesting experiment with Sheffield that we've had for the last couple of years, where basically we've only run 2 formulas, 10 races, aim to try to get finished for 4 o'clock. It's gone down positively with customers. It's the crowds have actually slightly gone up at Sheffield over the years. I mean, some of that may be the Coventry effect, but I think Bradford. I've been approaching it completely different. I mean, we've got a big banger meeting planned there later in April, if all things go too well. Well, at Stoke we were taking like 190 cars for that event and just filling the place and crippling the place space-wise and creating an enormous problem. This time around it will be 120 cars. We're going for quality, not quantity.
Okay. And are there any other changes or differences that fans or drivers would see since we were last at the stadium?
Difficult to say, really. I mean, we've got a lot of different sort of techniques planned for it. Obviously, the South Stand will be exclusively for VIP guests. That was a major investment back in sort of 2001, 2002. It is absolutely fantastic inside, and I'm delighted to say that I've been allocated an office in there, which has got its own balcony that overlooks turn 3 and 4, and I'll be able to pass the trophy to Tom Harris directly from my balcony. But the stadium still gives you those goosebumps as you walk into it. Yeah. We'll be looking to recreate the magic. I mean, I'm sort of proud of 96 and 97, where we had sort of celebrity presenters, good music. We've learned a lot in that 25 years of promoting. This will be about putting a show on.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. You've kind of mentioned it already. So BriSCA Formula One has traditionally got that strong hold in the north, and many fans and drivers have potentially drifted away from the sport as sort of tracks have closed down close by. So is there a plan to get these fans and drivers back?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same goes not just for Formula One, for other formulas. The sport has had an alarming decline in the north, and that's for reasons beyond promoters' control. I think there is a pent-up demand for it in the north. The fact that Sheffield has been growing and got excellent facilities, I think the 2 tracks working in tandem and a regular number of dates between the 2 tracks, we're hoping will rekindle, create. At the moment, the Formula One calendar is not ideal because of the geographical location of tracks and the justification to own a Formula One, a unit to keep it and travel with it. I mean, we're talking, apart from racing at home perhaps a couple of times in 6 or 7 weeks, they ask for drivers to, on all the other weekends, do a 400-mile round trip. Yeah. We need to create a geographical base for it so that we can grow drivers and they can race locally and then choose to travel away. That's what we've lost because of the tracks that have gone. And I think Sheffield and Bradford will, over 2 to 3 years, create drivers. I mean, it's amazing people who've contacted us. I mean, even yesterday, I mean, a famous name on the side of John Lund's car, which people remember, Barmer's Agricultural. Yesterday evening, Dave Barmer's son rang us. They've expanded the business and to help us out with equipment if we needed to Odsal. So I think it's going to bring an awful lot of people back to the sport and a new generation. Yeah,
brilliant. I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. You've mentioned the having a banger date there. Do you have a date for potentially the first Formula One meeting that fans can put in their diary?
Absolutely. Weather permitting, obviously, because we've got the wind weather to contend with. But on the 1st of January, you'll have to get them once you can. On the 1st of January, New Year, New Season, 2,000 tickets will go on sale for the 3rd of April, Easter Saturday.
Brilliant. So is that going to be? Is that going to be the sort of the initial capacity, or is that going to be?
I've got to tease you a bit. I can't tell you that we're in coronavirus.
I'll leave that there.
I'll just get one of them 2,000 very quickly.
You heard there first. You heard it first. Just going back to something you said around Formula One stock cars. So, you both are very clearly passionate about about the sport. It has suffered because of the loss of tracks recently, but the driving numbers have seemingly remained robust. Do you see Bradford as fundamental in the sport's future success when you look at it as a bigger picture?
Go on, Ian. You can go first.
Yeah, I think it'll be very pivotal, to be honest, Jonathan. As Steve said, not necessarily BriSCA F1, but certainly with like the twos who have a good, strong shale contingent. You know, I think you're going to get drivers coming back there. Eventually, you know, people are going to look at it, and it is going to be very pivotal because it is going to be the stadium sort of thing. You know, like Steve said, even now we walk in there, and even though she's looking a little bit tired and a little bit of an old girl, the hairs on the back of your neck just still stand up, you know, and you can imagine fanfare for the common man playing. So, you know, I think it's going to be very pivotal for drivers, and, you know, hopefully, you know, Steve set aside quite a substantial budget for advertising for the first meeting, well, throughout. So, you know, we want to bring people back, but it's no good them coming once. We need to give them something so that they come back again. And that's what we're going to try and achieve.
Okay.
I think it's what we must acknowledge is that stock car racing has always been, apart from the very early days, since the sort of mid-60s onwards, has evolved into a Northern and Midland sport. We've lost tracks for time immemorial. It's not a recent occurrence. I think Odsal reopening as a Northerner, it's stock cars coming home. And I think it is going to regenerate. I mean, Formula One's, in fairness to it, it's been knocked about. You know, we lost Coventry, we lost Wimbledon. More recently, we've lost Stoke and Bellevue, which we haven't really yet been able to measure the consequences of that because of the strange year that we've had. Yeah. But with what we have lost, it's held up well.
Yeah.
And I've got every reason to believe that the sport will have a good sort of 10 years ahead of it. I think it will regenerate, regrow. We'll get new drivers. I mean, I think our biggest obstacle with Formula One is the diversion of where the meetings are and travelling. I think if we can start getting sort of more localised, more regional racing, which I've always backed forever, I think the sport is gonna grow.
Yeah, absolutely. It just seems there's like that base there, doesn't there? I mean, even in 2020 with the limited number of meetings, it has been a number of drivers that have wanted to race, and there's still people building cars, there's still people buying cars. It seems quite prosperous underneath. It just needs the tracks to race at, doesn't it?
Yeah, it needs the tracks to race at, whatever the situations are, because some things, whatever walk of life or sport you're in, you can't control everything. We've got to evolve and run with it. I mean, we're not going to fall over and die because X, Y, or Z happens. You've got to pick up the pieces and move forward because that is life. And I think we've got to be positive towards it. There's no point bleating or bemoaning that something's happened. It's about what comes next. Yeah. You know, we do have a tendency of inward looking as a sport collectively instead of looking outwards. And there's always, you know, we can't change what's happened. What we must do is endeavour to improve the future.
Yeah. Okay. And talking of improvements, I've seen bits on social media that you might be looking for, possibly are looking for people to get involved in a bit of a DIY SOS in the new year or over the winter. Now that you've pretty much kind of got confirmation, 99% there, how do people get involved? What do they need to do if they want to come and help get Bradford up and running again?
Well, me and Ian will announce something in the next week about that. I mean, we have had, thankfully, quite a lot of people from trades and what have you. We're going to start, I've got hundreds of messages here, start compiling a list.
Yeah.
So little Sophie has kindly agreed to compile it all. I'll be contacting people for telephone numbers so we can contact them. But the more people we can have, the better, because it's going to help not only with some of the costs towards reopening it, but the more people we can have in some of the areas and cosmetically, the more we can do. So we'll put some information out sort of the early part of next week and how to contact. And then I want to put a list together I'll pass it on to Sophie, and then we'll start planning with people when we want them in sort of January, February, March.
Brilliant. Sounds yeah, a great way to get people involved and get people at Odsal. Guys, before we go, is there anything you'd like to add before I kind of sign off, if you like?
I've got something. Sophie and I, BSCDA, we discuss this quite a lot. I think the message I'd like to put out there, I mean, Formula One's is in a good shape, and 99% of the people that come enjoy it. But we have people that constantly want to undermine it, knock it, and I think we've got to be together on this. You know, people have little digs here and there, moan that tracks are going. Promoters are human beings, just like people that come out, and you take away the moans and the knocks, the job's not that bad. And I think, you know, it's been a difficult year. We've taken a step forward, but we need to come together. We need to stop knocking promoters, knocking drivers, knocking each other. We really have to come together and look to the future and not keep going back to how it was 25 years ago. Because being one of them people that loves reading magazines from 1960s and 1970s, it weren't actually any better then. You know, but they think it was because it was black and white. It's just as good now as it was then.
But I think, what you know, the Chase Series in 2020, that just showed you when drivers and promoters and fans come together, what you can achieve as a sport. And I think if you can carry that on into 2021 with Bradford or with other tracks, and it can only do it good, can't it? Now,
2020 shows what the family's capable of. It came together. Everybody cooperated because in June we had discussions. I think we saw if we had you doing surveys to ask if we had enough drivers. For different reasons, drivers were either furloughed, got difficulties at work, or quite a lot took a moral stance. The cars were ready, wanted to race, but obviously having laid staff off or furloughed didn't feel comfortable. But everybody came together. It was quite humbling. We've had a cracking season. The only one that sort of missed out was me with the last round. I had to give the refunds back. So everything that happened, you know, we already raised 10 grand.
Yeah.
The racing was good. I think something like 77 drivers raced in those 9 meetings around about. Some great talent and new cars and new drivers came into it. It's fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Okay. Thank you for that. And then thank you for those comments. Ian, Steve, thanks so much for your time this evening. I think, you know, you've given some really positive messages and you are making a lot of people very happy. To those who are watching, you know, what does the return of Bradford mean for you personally? It'd be great to see some of your reactions in the comments. And for those of you who previously said that you're going to buy a 2-2 to run around Bradford if it ever reopens, you better get buying. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.